Hey everybody, this is the Nephew SIG Automation meeting for Wednesday, August 23rd. So let us get started. I will display the agenda. Window, that one. Okay, so all right, so Stephen, you want to mention your latest video? Do we have Stephen? Actually, I don't see Stephen yet, so I will just say yes. So we have a contribution from Stephen to our learning series about the operator. Again, I encourage anyone and everyone to go to the wiki, see we have 5 episodes now. I did the first 4 with put quite a bit of effort into them, but you don't need to put that level of effort in. You'll see the 4th one, I just say basically just there's no write up, there's more just pointing you to the video. It's okay. We don't need to do it at the same level. I just wanted the first few because I figured that would be the entry point for a lot of people to have it. I just don't want to answer a lot of questions. So I wanted the material out there to answer it for me. So we've got 20 people on here. That's 20 videos or articles or slide decks that we can have by next week if everybody just pitches in one. So there's a list there of things, but of course contribute your own ideas as well. Anyway, I will stop pushing that and we'll go to the next item, which hopefully will just take a few minutes before we get to Sagar's business. So yeah, I wanted to get an update from Bala. I know the release team met yesterday, Monday, and want to know where we stand with getting our schedule for R2 up and running.
Yeah, I actually started putting sprints. I started one sprint, which starts this week and ends this week. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about since you had this in the item. So I randomly pulled few items into the sprint from the backlog. That is something we need to probably plan slightly better, John, and get into the mode of what we used to do in the R1, where we used to look at items and then track the progress from the sprint perspective. So there is a start, but we need to get if you go to the combined sprint, I just had a
okay, awesome,
few items.
good.
Yeah, but we need to, I need to also do a slightly better job in terms of creating a few more issues for documentation, etc. And then also to reflect the work that you've been doing. We need to do that. And then the other thing that we need to do is, obviously we need to track in these meetings.
Right. Well, I know that Stephen also put an item on the agenda, if there's time, to go over the information from SIG 1, so that will lead into this planning as well. But I guess maybe what I'd want to see is to take that past the one sprint and try and see, even if just in a brief wiki page or something that just says starts from our expected. If SIG release decides what the release date's going to be, then back up how many sprints and how many do we want. It's really up to SIG release. How many do we want for hardening? Like we had last time. I think you put in a couple of sprints where we just sort of had a code freeze, right? I mean, I can roughly estimate we have a couple of months, right? And so I just want to see how things lay out. I think we already have more material, honestly, than we're going to fit. And so much less taking in the requirements from SIG 1. So this is great. We're getting started. But yeah, let's maybe next week we'll see if we can have a rough plan together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
John, I'm assuming November 15th is our date. Is that the right assumption?
Sounds good to me, before Thanksgiving holiday.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Tentatively, let's put that down. Yeah, let's work backward from that first. Yeah.
Okay, that's the assumption I'm working on. Probably that's where I'm trying to create sprints based on that assumption.
What day of the week is that?
November 15th. I did not see, but around that weekend.
Sunday, no?
Well, I'm just wondering, do we want to, like,
Or
at
just
some point we have
before
to have the TSC, we have to have the
It's a
TSC
Wednesday.
approved.
It's a Wednesday. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess my point is, we should figure out when we're going to go to the TSC and ask for approval, like we did last time, and then that's probably the date, which could be any day. Like, it doesn't have to be at an official TSC meeting. Like last time, we scheduled a special meeting for it. So I think they're like this. The TSC meeting is supposed to fall on the U.S. Thanksgiving holiday, so that's not going to happen anyway. So maybe the 16th is like the date we'd ask for approval, which then kind of everything falls back from that.
And I'm
Yeah.
assuming that we need like 2 sprints for integration, right? Last time we were a bit short.
At least.
So that puts us in mid-October.
Yes,
And
correct.
it's
So if you
almost September, so we have about 6 weeks.
if you do the math, it's not, we don't have a lot of time.
I mean, realistically, we should have started like by now. Spring one.
Yeah, I
To
think
do anything at all. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think we'll fit in the items. I think there is some work in progress we can show. For example, I know Antu and Vish has raised their hands. I'll just take 10 seconds. And John has putting a lot of work in terms of documentation, other things, and also Rado is putting a lot of things. I think, according to me, those things are also part of the release in terms of the release cadence, etc. So yeah, please.
Yeah,
go
I mean,
ahead.
Alexi's also he's got it up and running on OpenShift. Which is pretty cool. So
that's true, John. And also
well,
we are
last time we took advantage of the time that we announced the release to, the time we say we're good for release to time marketing start going out as a documentation period.
Yeah, I think we have one more.
That could happen again.
One more couple of other members trying to run them on OpenShift internally. With that said, Antu, I think you had raised your hands. Please go ahead.
Nope, I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay, then Vish.
Okay, so any goals that we want to have as a community for this sprint as compared to last release that, to make, hey, what worked well? I know Tal was actually thinking of actually having some sort of post-mortem. Is that still planned to see what we can improve? Or, I mean, I know we have gelled as a team, but trying to see, hey, this would have been helpful if, this particular process was followed. Any such insights or anything that we want to gather and see if we can apply, even though, at least we tried.
Tal, what's the status of the retrospective piece?
The status is that I will apologize again. I have a draft and I want to make it public. So before I send actually a survey, I want all of us to look at my ideas and maybe add some more questions. So I really apologize. It's taken so long. Sorry, guys. It was just a lot of internal work lately. And I humbly beg your apology. I will. The document is open right now, actually, in front of me, and I hope to get it done today.
If you want to link it in the agenda, then that's fine too.
I mean, for example, it might be one or two things that we probably want to focus on. I mean, at least for me, a request would be like, hey, if a PR is open, can it be open for 24 hours so that I can actually look at it to understand what's going on? Exactly. It's a request. It can be, depending on the day or where we are, we probably have to merge. That's okay. Just like trying to give that opportunity. That would be my request. I'm sure there might be requests like that or similar or something else. So this might be also for the release team too, Bala and Stephen, this kind of things that can be made.
I'm thinking whether should we really make it open one of these meetings and use 30 minutes for a retrospective and ask the top item from each one of the participants.
Because 2 things for me is this one, and the second one would be like, our user stories, we are getting better always, right? For sure. Hey, how can we make sure the acceptance criteria becomes firmer? Just showing that we are continually improving or becoming more robust. Things like that, where somebody comes in and say that I understand this, otherwise, there's a story out there. Or it can also be called out as it's like a spike one. Somebody needs to go and figure out what the acceptance criteria should be. Small things like that. So suggestion, but feel free to consider or not consider.
Absolutely
But-
great
Okay,
suggestions.
so why don't we do that? Why don't we put it on the agenda to devote 30 minutes to go over open discussion as well as Tal's document?
Yes,
next.
then let's do it. Yeah, let's do it for the next week then.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
All right, Joseph, I believe you were next.
Yeah, so hi. We had a discussion in a couple of earlier meetings, right, regarding RAN OA. So we are interested in work on those topics. We are in discussion with Sagar as well. So maybe we need to add some user stories related to that as well, I think. Maybe towards the end of Sagar's demo today, I have a slide we can just briefly discuss on the topics at a high level.
So yeah, so far what's on the board is only the stuff this SIG sort of knows about as gaps. And all the stuff from SIG 1, like RAN and things like that, we'll talk about. Stephen I want to be sure we have time. We're a couple minutes over this topic. So we can, if there's time at the end, I'd love to see that slide. I think that right now, and Stephen had already brought up some document from SIG 1 about similar things. So that's going to be, I think, something maybe we should, over the next week, as we prepare for things, we should try to get, I think that's what Bala was saying, try and get the things on the board that relate to those, and then we'll have to figure out how we can fit them, or if we can fit them with just a few weeks. Honestly, I'm not sure how much we're going to fit, but like we should start planning them for R3. There can be stuff in the R2 sprints that actually won't be delivered till R3, and that's fine too, because a lot of these things are going to take a while. So that'd be great. Yeah. Go ahead and put a link to your slide, or if you don't have a link to it, at least put
sure.
agenda item over here.
Because John, my point is related to the same thing, or why I raised my hand, but maybe it's like, how are we going to come to an agreement between SIG 1 and us? Are we going to try to do anything beyond what we have as the backlog? I think there is some expectation. Yeah. So and how do we do that? Because it's like, I have the feeling that if we don't do anything, we only do the backlog. And I think there are some people who have expectations to do more, probably. So we have a bit of a challenge, I think.
I did try to set the expectations in the last TSC and say, look, like, it's likely R2 is just going to be a filler. Yeah. But I hear you. We have to see what they are. I haven't been following it closely because I have other things I'm doing. But like, as we go over that, maybe later in this meeting over the next week, we'll decide if there's some pieces we can do. But it's not a lot of time, and it all depends on. I mean, it sounds like Samsung's interested in contributing some, so maybe we'll have the resources to make it happen. Ravi.
Hi, John. I might have missed because I just came back from a vacation. I saw the item on the capacity scaling script. Last time I tried, I could not get the end-to-end ping working once you scaled the network function. Is that resolved?
We haven't even looked at that. So if you, I remember that. I think you have an issue on that, or you commented on that issue with that. We haven't addressed. All I did with that issue is do some little workarounds. But the thing, for those who aren't maybe familiar, is that while the scaling works and the pod comes up, Ravi was having trouble getting an actual ping through. We had put in, there is a, I think in one of there's another issue there. Maybe this is the one that says we should change the end-to-end test to try another ping after we scale. We haven't done that. And I think Ravi it wasn't working. I think it's probably a free 5GC thing or an operator thing where the config map wasn't regenerated properly or something. I don't know. I haven't investigated it. Or it's a free
capacity change case config map actually doesn't even change.
Oh, the
It's
config map doesn't change. Only
Yeah.
the deployment change.
Most likely to do with the control plane kind of the state itself getting messed up, and the tunnels getting dropped and so on. So I even tried to reset the UE pod and the Gnode B pod, but I could still not get it through. So yeah.
Because we had similar issues, John, right? When we tried at some point, you remember that we had some issues, and we tried to restart each individually, and then it never came up again. So then we started from zero, and then it started. So I have the feeling that there is something in the control plane that doesn't sync properly or restart properly.
Yeah, I guess the question is whether this is a free 5GC issue or this is a nephew issue. And
yeah, or is it like a networking problem? Because in this case, you're losing.
Yeah. So all that needs to be figured out, and we also have. It'll be interesting to see. So Ravi, no, that hasn't been solved. I guess that's
okay. Yeah, sure.
All right. So with that, let's go on to open air interface stuff, because hey, maybe that'll fix it. Just use a different network function. So anyway, go ahead, Sagar.
Yeah, I was thinking that probably Stephen can show his document before, because if everyone start discussing about what I'm presenting, then Stephen will not be able to show his document.
It's not my document, for one thing.
Yeah, I mean, I know. Sorry, it's not your document.
You wanted to discuss. I'm worried it's going to take.
Well, so the biggest thing is, obviously it's well known that we are a little detached from SIG1 during R1, and then they put forward this effort on doing this little document. That's I see some of us actually commenting on it, but then not really aligned. And this Monday's meeting, that's almost like two factions talking on let's do some really moonshot stuff versus being realistic. And then I just want us to kind of more reflect on what is realistic, because everyone kind of circle everything down to, hey, R2, let's do this. And then I think a few of us are like, and that became a bit of a discussion actually on Monday. So that's just something I didn't think we have commented on it enough, right? And then for R1, for example, we took what Kaushik did on the user story, I think 6 months before we started any cycles, and then we never even care what SIG1's talking about afterward, or if they have any requirements at all. And then admittedly they were a little disappointed too, because we explicitly asked if they can give us a list of personas, for example, and we never got it. So there it's both ways. I just think for this cycle, if anything at all, we should make a little better concerted effort of communicating with SIG1 and tell them, hey, we can't do any of this.
Yeah, that's also why I raised. Should we not maybe devote next week just to go through the documents and try to come, from our perspective, based on what we know, basically give feedback to say, okay, these are the things we probably can try to look at, and at least we have some feedback, because right now it's like there is discussions, but we have to somehow have the dialogue somehow. I think maybe we should devote next week meeting to a certain extent. So besides the planning, is do review of the document and try to
3 things for next week's meeting. So we should decide here now, which are So one is to go through this document and understand what is asked of us for SIG1.
Yeah.
One is sprint planning, and 2 is postmortem. I mean, maybe we need to schedule a second meeting next week for 1 or 2 of these. But when it's regular meeting, everybody knows about it and can plan ahead. When it's one-off, we don't get as good of attendance. So I think the postmortem we can probably keep to 20 minutes, 15 minutes even maybe. The planning though, maybe the sprint planning can't really. Here's one proposal. We take 30 minutes to go through SIG1, this document and whatever other SIG1 requirements, and come up with what we think as a group, and what folks Samsung said they want to work on certain aspects, like what we think we have the resources to deliver either in the R2 or R3 timeframe, and set the expectations appropriately there. And we take 15 minutes to do the postmortem, where we take 15 minutes to do the planning for sprint for the first sprint or whatever, just for the first sprint with backlog items. I don't know. That's one proposal. It's tight. It's a lot to.
It's such a perfect box
Yes,
of
nice.
time to switch over. It's probably never going to work out. but yeah, let's try that.
Yeah. We can try, but my expectation is doing more than one topic is hard.
I would think retrospective itself would probably take 2 hours for everyone to jump in.
Other thing is probably we can do the retrospective in the SIG release meeting.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, that's
if enough folks would like to attend.
I know, John. Would you be able to make it the SIG release?
Yeah. If it's for the if there's a specific topic, yeah, I can make it. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think probably we could do that, Stephen. Then probably we can do the retrospective the SIG release meeting and dedicate the SIG automation for the actual work planning.
Okay.
Yeah, especially if anything becomes like a more official release or check-in process, it's actually more of a SIG 3 thing anyway. So
yeah,
we should put that in.
I mean, both of those topics probably could go into that meeting. I don't know but whatever the retrospective.
I mean, it's an hour. It's an hour after regular time. So hopefully most of the folks can still make it. It's Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific.
I think let's announce in the SIG release channel today that probably we are going to have the retrospective, and then probably we'll encourage everybody to participate.
Okay, excellent. Okay, awesome. So then maybe what I'm hearing is, Stephen, you're saying let's all take a look at this document.
Yes.
And maybe be
comment on it, so it makes it feels like our SIG 2 actually care about what they're talking about.
Okay. Yes.
I mean, for one thing, John, if I fault it on you, you haven't been attending SIG 1 meetings.
What's that? I have not.
I mean, you haven't been attending SIG 1 meetings, so it's like kind of missing. I mean, Wim's been there.
Only if we knew when the meetings are, we could attend.
There is one tomorrow, by the way, at 9. There is one tomorrow at 9.
Is there still? I thought they canceled that Thursday one already.
I don't.
That's the confusion. Even us regular attendees don't know exactly which one is.
I think there is a meeting tomorrow. Normally they have 2 meetings.
Okay.
There's actually 3 meetings. There is one on Monday and Thursday by SIG 1.
No, I thought Monday, Tuesday are the only 2 fixed ones. So Thursday one.
Also Thursday.
Okay.
But they last week it didn't happen because Sana was out, but it happened most of the time. And then there is one on Wednesday, and then there's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday at 9.
And that Thursday was devoted to the.
They are both actually on the document right now. So they used to be something different, but they are both on the same document. On the
Tuesday,
on the main
Tuesday
document.
I know it's working group 4.
So
I sort of care because it's SDK.
Yeah. I felt like it was sort of like a really like I honestly, right, like I've said before, I'm not a telco guy particularly. I felt this was domain expertise that I didn't have, and that that this was really up to that group to figure out what's going to be most impactful for the audience of Mafio, right? So that's how I see it, right? Those functional use cases I don't have enough telco industry knowledge and depth of knowledge to say this is going to be what's impactful and bring more people to our community and demonstrate the value of what we're doing. So I'm looking to that group to do that. In the meantime, I'm working on the underlying platform pieces. So I didn't think I had all that much to offer, honestly, in those meetings.
But then recently they're trying to give requirements. So they play the PM role right now, and then so it would be nice for for us.
For example,
participatory.
Yeah. For example, from DT basically. So we had some discussion on infra to network function and what they want to see and stuff like that. So it was really, I think that was really good, useful.
Okay.
So there are certain.
He's very keen on that. Yeah. So
there is certain things that probably so it's a mix of more the visionary thing and then something more concrete.
Yeah,
so that's a challenge, but yeah.
Hey, you and I tried to straighten up the discussion a lot on Monday. I feel that it's a bit of a lost cause because people still, the participants there are still very passionate about more futuristic stuff. And then that's not a problem. It's just that, I also want, if user communities are there, I want them to focus a bit more of telling us, this is what we want to see. for us to like potentially use it moving forward.
Okay, well,
All right.
anyway, I think the point is let's review this document, and then we'll proceed from there. Liam.
Yeah, just one point maybe on the SIG one and prioritization. I think we have to have a kind of tight scope on the R2 because we need to have enough small wins out there to allow the big wins to happen down the road. And the big wins down the road won't happen if we're not alive at the time. You know, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. Okay.
Agreed.
So let's make that our goal for this next week is to get that
And yeah,
understanding.
and thank you. That's all my intent was on adding this.
Okay. Awesome. All right, then let's proceed to the open air interface.
Okay, perfect. So I'll share my screen now. Okay, so I guess you can see it. So I'm not gonna deploy everything one by one because of course it's gonna take some time and then we cannot discuss anything. So I can make you go through the repositories. So I have two different repositories. Earlier my repositories were on GitLab. So one repository I maintained where there are all the packages of OAI. And here there are the package variants and something similar. It's the similar repository as you have for FreeFireGC. So it's exactly similar. And then in this repository, I have the whole tutorial on how to deploy on Nephew and step by step. And I can show you the blueprint. So this is the blueprint which I'm trying to deploy. So there'll be a one namespace in which all the operators will be residing, something similar to FreeFireGC. And then and if you see here, there is one thing I would like to emphasize on that. There we made one single operator, but here I chose a different approach and I decided to make, operator for each network function. It was a bit time-consuming process, but I made it in a way that probably later on every network function can reconcile based on its own configuration and can have more intelligence later. But right now, more or less, they all share the same code base. And then another thing, what I did is that I used exactly same CRDs of AMF and SMF, and I'm not actually using their capacity or throughput and other parameters. And I use them for UDR, AUSF, and UDM. That means I just use the same one and I just changed it with UDR, UDM, and AUSF. So all of these network functions, they work on all these different controllers, they start when they deploy their own CRDs also. And the CRDs are and all of them, each one of them have their particular CRD. AMF, AUSF, and RF, SMF, and UDM, UDR. So I just did it to extend it. And then what happens is that then the operator manages the namespace OEICP on which all the control plane network functions are. And if you see in the square, you have UDR, AUSF, UDM, NRF, SMF, and AMF. So what happens is that first I deploy database, and then I deploy operators, or both can be at the same point of time. It's okay. And then after that, I deploy all the control plane network functions using different package variant sets. And then once they are deployed, package variant, sorry, not set. And once they are deployed, I deploy the package variants for UPF, not the package variant set, because I want the UPFs, each and every UPF to have its own DNN, so that these two UEs, at the end of the day, I can redirect them to a particular edge UPF based on the DNN. So let's say I have to update this. No, I don't have to update. Yeah. So for example, the Edge 1 UPF is using internet DNN. I'll mention it somewhere in here. And then the Edge 2 UPF is using DNN name OAI. So let's say when I connect the G node B to the AMF. So another thing that the G node B right now, it's not the G node B is just a plain KPT package which uses the rendered Helm charts. And I have not created any KRM function like you did for UVRAN sim. I still have to do that to automate that process of getting the AMF IP address inside the G node B so that it can automatically find the AMF IP address rather than me having to give the G node B the AMF IP address. And also G node B can create its different interfaces N2 and N3. Right now, I am just using one single interface to avoid to avoid some networking issues. Right now, I'm using one interface N2 for, let's say, N2 for N2 and N3. It's possible. And then this G node B gets connected to takes care of two UEs, NR UE1 and NR UE2. So these are OAI simulated UEs. So this whole stack here, the G node B, NR UE, and the NR UE, this whole stack is a bit heavy, meaning that you need minimum one CPU for the G node B and one CPU for each UE, because the G node B and the UE, they simulate different layers of RAN. So I would say like the whole physical layer, so the channel model and everything. So that's why it's a bit heavy. So so that's how the whole deployment looks like. And so here in this repository, I've explained how we first onboard the repository, then the database, and then after that we do the operator and the control, and then every single network function. At this step, once we deploy, so there will be a lot of restarts, because once one network function is deployed, then the other, then there are certain restarts there. And sorry, there is Nico. Yeah, sorry. And another thing is that at this point of time here, there are certain issues which I'm trying to resolve, and those issues in our network functions I figured out because of Nefio's dynamic environment, let's say, and dynamically changing all these IP addresses. So I have to fix those issues in OEI code network, and we are doing it in our new release. I've reported all of them to my colleagues, and I've mentioned it also in a note here, so that you might see some restarts, and because of that, later on we will have problem in connection with the G node B. And then once the network functions are started and everything is fine, I start with the package variant for the UPF, and then then the next step is like how to check the connection between UPF and SMF, as you have also shown in the tutorial. And then we'll start with the G node B. So the G node B, the challenge, which right now is the challenge for me, let's say, is that I'm doing things a little bit manually in the KPT, which is it's not nice. I mean, there's no point of then using automation. That I am from the AMF deployment, and I'm using JQ. I'm getting the IP address of the AMF and the gateway, and then in that subnet, randomly taking one IP address and giving it to the G node B, and filling it. It's NAD.
So you're not using the IP claim piece for that.
No. I'm not using for G node B so far. No.
Okay, and that are those things that are allocated when you say, like, when you're using JQ, you're pulling that.
I'm just parsing it,
Okay, I see those.
Yeah.
You're pulling from the deployment. So that was okay. So if I understand, what we want is an IP claim record, IP claim resource in two different packages that resolve to the same IP. So essentially, we're doing DNS or service discovery at config time. Is that what we're trying to accomplish? But we're doing it right now manually. So we should theoretically already be able to do it, or is there something different here? That's what I'm trying to.
It's okay. There are two different things here. First, I want the AMF IP address, because as you did in UVRAN sim, that the G node B requires the AMF IP address.
Is that allocated by the cluster, or is that allocated by us? beforehand.
It's
That's, I guess.
it's allocated when the AMF deployment is up and running. So it's right there. It's allocated using an IP claim.
I mean, IP,
Or in
okay, not my,
in the URAN sim, in the URAN sim, it's kind of we have this dependency management, right? So that's covered in URAN sim. So actually the specialization pipeline allows for that dependency, so you can dynamically ask for the MF IP and you get it, and then you can move on and stuff like that. So I think we have to do the same here, but we have to put that machinery in place to do that here. I think we just have to build the package.
Okay, so you mean by dependency.yaml, right? Which will inject the configuration of AMF.
Correct, and then I'll pick it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then
Yeah, exactly. That's what I want to do actually. I'll explain, because earlier I didn't do between SMF and UPF, and now I did it. So now I have a dependency.yaml, which is, in my case, it's inverse actually. That the dependency is that the UPF waits for SMF, and then in the UPF, the SMF configuration is injected and it gets the SMF IP address, and the UPF starts the PFCP session. So it's inverse than FreeFireGC. So,
okay, but you can reverse. Yeah, you can reverse because we are flexible, because that's resource you can put anywhere, right? So we can
exactly.
Yeah.
So what I was just trying to say is that
I raised my hand for a quick question. That you built all these operators. Do I remember? Am I recalling correctly that you built these operators in Python?
Yes, I'm gonna show that too.
Okay, awesome.
I mean, this is almost done. So the only thing which I was trying to say here is that in GNodeB, right now it's a little bit manual, and I have written the steps to how to do it manually. So probably this tutorial, some people might have issues, and I have opened those issues also. Eric already tried, and I opened all those issues so that I can quickly resolve them. And I mean, here you can see there are these. Earlier I was trying on GitLab and then GitHub. So everything is fine here. And then, so these are all the package variants, if you can see. All these package variants which are deployed. So here you see that in the regional cluster, there are two different namespaces, one for operator and one for the network functions control plane. And they are here. And then similarly on the edge cluster. So everything is fine. And the thing which I was actually saying for GNodeB would be, let's say, is that first you need to fetch the AMF IP address like this and the AMF subnet. And the hack is that you go to in AMF. So in GNodeB, what I have is just a normal KPT. I mean, it's just a KPT file just to deploy using KPT, nothing else. And inside, as a resource, I have the Helm charts, rendered Helm charts. And exactly, I just asked the users while following the tutorial that please change the IP address of AMF here manually, which recovered using the previous command. And then the Gnode, and then the interfaces for N2 and N3 on GNodeB. And here you choose any random IP address in the same subnet.
Right. So given that this is a config map, is this this is the config map that the actual application process reads? Okay. So you might find it useful, this config map generator. I created a very simple config map generator function that allows you to assemble a config map from a template basically, right? Or just literals. And I'll probably add cell to that so that you can sort of extract any resource value from anywhere in the whole set of resources and plop it into a key value pair in a config map. Config maps are kind of a pain and something that in the KRM function, like Customize has a whole config map generation functionality that we don't have in KEP that would be nice to have. So we might want to just use Customize in this case. I don't know, but like for now, I just made a crude config map generator function that might be useful.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
in PR right now. It's not merged, but it's there.
Okay. Can you just share the link for the PR so they can have a look?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. So I mean, later on, what I'm thinking, because Vim told me while ago, like a month ago, which I understood today, more or less, that I can use config.ref. I mean, the config.ref in the CRD, which is there. Let's say there is a section in the CRD known as config.ref. So at least using that config.ref section, I can manage the configuration for AMF, SMF, and UPF, which I will show you later. And I think for GNodeB also I can do something similar. And so here, and then I asked the users to change in the network attachment definition the IP address. And this way we can just deploy the GNodeB. Let's say that, and then the cumbersome part is that we need to mention the context.
By the way, I got a quick question. For the rest, so like for AMF, UPF, and SMF, you go through the specialization pipeline, but for GNodeB, not. Is my understanding correct?
No, exactly. GNodeB is not automated. Let's say it's just
yeah, but the rest.
like,
so for the others are basically right.
Yes.
So the other you basically okay.
That's
Because
I
the
just
one
had,
thing.
sorry, go ahead.
No, the one thing that Sagar was mentioning, right? So one of the, let's say, technical debt items that I listed was that there's a lot of config that happens still at the workload cluster, right? So you cannot manipulate it. That's not the day 2. So that's what I don't know, Tal, how you say it. I call it the day 0 configuration, right? Which basically says, okay, here's a bunch of config as a startup. Please use that. So I think if you use the config ref mechanism, I think we might have to do one thing in specialization that we didn't have, because I think we have to automate the injection of that config ref automatically in the UPF deployment rather than doing it statically, right? So yeah, so basically, yeah, there is something to be enhanced, but it would be really good if we can get all these parameters from the top somewhere. We don't have to do anything with them, but that we can just inject them, and then the operator level then understands.
You're talking about like
and
the
so on.
3GPP stuff where like
Yeah,
the operator
whatever.
can use it as input, but we don't need to do anything with it in specialization. It's just for the operator's input.
Yeah, we just need to reference it. I think the only thing that we need to do in specialization is say, okay, here's a bunch of CRDs. And I think it's fairly simple to do because we have the owner reference, right? So with the owner reference, when you put it in, and we can optimize that so we can then do the automatic injection. I think we have to do small enhancement to make that work. But yeah, I think it would be really good if we can do that for both actually free 5GC as well as for this.
I can show you actually what I have in my mind and which I will do next week.
Yeah.
So that's it. I mean, I just connected 2 UVs as you see, and then these UVs have their own tunnel. So this is okay. Now I will show you the operators because that will be the part.
I just had a quick question, Sagar.
Sure.
I mean, so I mean, with OI, I worked with OI in the past, but actually with GNodeB and with NI radios and so on, with smartphones. But I thought the idea was to actually bring a VCU and video into picture, right? I mean, how different is this demo from UERAN SIM and 5GC and free 5GC, for example, what we did in R1, right?
Okay, so in this one, what I was trying to showcase is that all the network functions are getting deployed, the core network functions are getting deployed using operators which are made in Python, rather than in free 5GC, they were made in Go. So I wanted to show that people can also use Python to make operators, and Python is it's an easy framework in Python. And then I decided to make this kind of a blueprint where I use the monolithic GNodeB of OAI rather than the CUDU split. So I can extend it and make it with the CUDU split too, where this was just the starting point, let's say. And the idea is later on to divide it here, the GNodeB, to have it even split, F1 split, and similarly these 2 UVs, and show the end-to-end scenario again.
Okay, is it the same code base? I mean, okay, I get the picture now. So is it the same code base? I mean, what they use for the monolithic GNodeB, and say basically if they split the CU and DU with your FN, is the same code base, or is it like this? Seems to be like more an emulated version of it? Is it? I mean, could you
Yeah,
take this
it's-
G-Node B and actually front haul it with radio and stuff?
Absolutely. So OAI is meant for this. So actually, the first thing which we are focusing these now is only hardware testing. Everything is done tested using hardware. Simulator is a priority, but hardware is a higher priority than the simulators itself. So we do allow people to test the F1 E1 split and the G-Node monolithic G-Node B in simulated mode, but it's meant to be tested in hardware. So the only thing which changes in the Docker image is the configuration file. The moment you change the configuration file, the G-Node B can be attached to a USRP, or it can be attached to a radio unit or split 8 or split 7.2. It's just the configuration file which makes the change. That's it.
Okay. Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. And then the Docker image remains the same. If there are not any more questions in the package section, I can jump into the operator. I cannot see the hands, by the way, so if anybody can help me moderate that.
Ravi has a hand, but I think it's stale. Yeah, I think we're good. Yeah, this is awesome. All right, go for it.
Okay, so in operators, so then there's another repository known as OA operators in Open Air interface. And in this repository, there is the source code for all the operators. So here also you will have something similar. And this is the deployment which I'm showing here just for testing the operators. And then here I have the source code of the operators. So for example, I'll make you go through the source code of UPF because there are also dependencies. So the structure of all the operators looks similar: controllers, deployment, package, and Docker file and README. Deployment is the deployment. So for deploying the operator, what I'm doing is that I'm just creating this huge YAML file. I can have a different one with service, cluster, role, and RBAC, but I just put everything in one. And then here, what I did is that in operator, so there is one config map of the operator, which is like this. So it will be the network function name, OP, and conf. The syntax is always same for all the network functions. So I try to have some similarity. And then there will be another, let's say, config map for the network function itself, which the operator will provide based on this information. So as we all know that the CRDs which we have today does not allow us to mention these kind of information, but I figured out that we can provide this information using config-ref. So I can provide all this information, this, let's say, image.
But Sagar, I think for me, there's two things. If we really see that this parameter is very important, we can extend our APIs, right? I mean, we can extend our CRD. So we have to, I think it's good to go through it and see where what belongs, right? Because if there is really parameters which are very generic, I am okay with extending our APIs just to put them, because it would be stupid to see right now the split was like everything that is interface related, we kind of have a spec for, right? Or not everything probably, but so that it might be missing things. So in my view, we have to potentially enhance our APIs. Because for me, the thing that we really did not do is the whole 3GPP stuff, right? So, but if there are things like a port on an interface or a protocol, and you need to open something for an ACL, that we should see how to enhance our APIs to accommodate for that. So I think we have to look at this from both angles, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, perfect. I perfectly.
We can discuss if you want.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a CLD discussion, but then instead of putting on an NF deployment, you may be able to extend it into like a 3GPP deployment, which will be included on UPF, AMF, and SMF deployment.
Correct.
So we can do that too. It doesn't need to saturate the NF deployment, but then you can create one which all the other NF actually include, or the 5G related NF actually include. Yeah, but then if it's 3GPP is so generic that so config-ref is meant for, in a way, vendor extensions. If any of the project or vendor extension pieces, you include them in the package, and the config-ref point to those objects that we are pushed together in a single deployment push. And so that was the intent. Obviously, it's free for any vendors to do whatever they want. But then 3GPP stuff is so generic that we probably would like to include that as a more official API for Nephew.
Okay. Okay. I mean, it took me 1.5 months to understand about this configuration, you know, just all of a sudden. So, and then this other config map, which is there, so it's only for OAI and actually for me to make my life easier, is that because earlier we were using, in C there is something known as libconf to parse the configuration. Now we have changed to YAML. So for me, I will just copy and paste the new YAML file here, and inside I'm using a templating it's just a templating language known as Jinja. So I use Jinja to parse everything, and these values I provide in the operator config map. So it's just for me to take care if anything changes in the future in OAI, I can accommodate it quickly.
So this is that Jinja template is rendered by the operator?
Yes, in the operator, yeah.
Okay.
So, and then you have, then this is the controller deployment. It's okay. In COF, there is no command actually. I put it in Docker file. By the way, in COF, you run the controller you run it like this. That's it. COF run controller all namespace if you would like to allow it in all namespaces, or you can just define one namespace. And this is how it looks like. I really followed the COF examples, and I think they are enough. I'll tell you what was not enough.
And Sagar, do you do the thing that we did in our operator, like checking whether the NADs are there before you deploy and stuff like that?
I do.
Okay.
I'll show you that also. So I have 6 minutes. I'll go quickly. So that's it. So in COF, there is something known as COF startup. So on startup, you can define the different logging level, the annotations which you want. So far, I didn't manage to remove the finalizers, and I hate finalizers, but I'll try to figure it out to remove the finalizers. And I also added them. So, and then after that, here you can have something like, there's something similar to KubeBuilder, I think, then something for create, update, and resume and then delete. What will happen if there is a delete? So it's exactly something similar. And here for create, we have our logic, you know. So for example, here I'm parsing the parameters, capacity, interface, and network instances. And since in UPF I have inverse dependency, meaning I'm waiting for SNF, I'm parsing the config refs, and then from config refs, I'm checking if the config ref says it's SNF deployment, then I will parse the IP address of SNF, which I will add in the config file of the UPF, which it requires this. And here, John, this is the place where I'm rendering the template, you know. And here you patch all the information all the time so that the UPF deployment objects gets updated on the fly. So I'm adding the state is creating. I think it's exactly similar which you guys also doing there in KubeBuilder. I'm always updating the message. And then there is the reconciler. So I'm adding the reconciler on all the objects which are created by the operator. I think something similar to you guys. And delete, and then update, and that's it. Now we come to the YODL part. So I am using the Python Kubernetes library, and I think you all really know this, that Python Kubernetes library does not probably allow you to, it does not allow you to, you know, tackle with every single resource which is there, or at least the extended custom CRDs. So I'm using the Kubernetes library here to create, let's say, basic things, deployment, SVC services. So here I'm creating the deployment. And by the way, there is also some sort of dependency that network functions are waiting for an RF to be ready using the init container. Probably in the next release of OAI, I won't be needing that anymore. So I will remove that init container because of that, the network functions wait a lot. And then, for example, then I'm creating here the service account, which is needed by the network function. Probably one of the network functions, let's say UPF, also requires privileges. So that means in OpenShift, I have to create an SCC, things like that. So I will have a little bit more functions there. And then I'm creating config map, deployment status. So for you, let's say Vim. So here is the NAT function, and the NAT function itself checks first that the NAT exists or not. And I have a flag. If I'm not using things with Nephio, I will create the NAT by myself and I will go ahead. But if I am using Nephio, then I will not. Then the operator will not create the NAT, and it will throw an error because the NAT didn't exist,
Nice.
or it will wait. So, and here you see, I don't know how many of you are fan of this, but if something is not there, I use the generic. I just call the Kubernetes API and I do things by myself, you know. And I use the.
That's
so
dangerous.
I'm using.
That is an interesting approach. Yeah, that's a good approach.
I mean,
Security people
yeah,
will not like you, probably.
I know. I have a library through which I can parse any single CRD. So I do things like this, you know. I know security people won't like it, but I can try to make it secure, you know. And even the HTTPS verify is false. So
Oh.
I can make it
Now
true,
you're on
add
record.
certificates. I can make it true, add pass certificates. It's okay, I think, yeah. So something, and then I do something similar for config.ref. In config.ref also, I am calling the API and then taking it, because in Go, I think you can do all these things in a nicer fashion. In Python, this is the only way I know, and I've been doing since past 6 years.
Yeah, the client Go APIs allows you to get wild types, basically, based on definition of the object that you passed in. So yeah, so this seems to be much more raw, if you will.
Yeah,
but it's really what it's all the API is doing under the hood anyway, right? There should be
under the hood is doing that anyway. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. I'm just showing what's there under the hood, you know, to the.
You just drive around without the hood of the car so that people can see the engine.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is amazing.
So that's it. So that's it. I mean, yeah, that's it.
So what? How do we? This is how much time we have. We have no time. Okay. How do we bring this? Like, you've got this in. Anyway, we have to think about how, as different, like, we put Free5GC in our Nephio thing because we built it all without like the participation of the Free5GC community. You're building this, you're putting it in your open air interface repositories. Like, I really want to. This is really great, and it also really is like we want to use this, like Wim was saying earlier, things that are missing in gaps in Nephio that would make your life easier, you should bring here and we should fix in Nephio, right? Like, so like the parameters that are 3GPP related should be in the Nephio APIs. Similarly, there's functionality that Nephio should provide that would make your life easier. Like, part of bringing in additional network functions is to discover the problems and the gaps and the missing features. So this is really awesome. I just want to make sure we can figure out how to, like, do we do demos or tutorials? Do we integrate this into a set of exercises? Do we add it to our CI? We need to think about all of those things.
It'll be interesting to see if we can mix vendors also.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see too.
Yeah. I don't think it'll work, but then yes, not right away.
No, I think it will work. I've tried a couple of things, you know, and this way at least we will check ourselves that we are compatible 3GPP, you know, interoperability. So it's not a bad of exercise actually.
So, but even PFCP and stuff like that, Saga?
Yeah, because OAI supports a lot of different UPFs, you know, and we in the past we have tried other UPFs also, like from ONF and other ones. So those things, yes, pretty sure. And even if there is a problem, if it does not work, I can go back to my team and they can resolve it. If there's a problem,
protocol compatibility would be one thing, but then for us will be like our networking setups, our other things that, and if we generate entities ourselves and things, are they accepted? Because we built it such that it's what is needed for Free5GC. So we just
he did it. I mean, that's a. So Stephen, from my perspective, he already did that, right? I mean, he
seems like he did. Yes.
Yeah, and he has a knob to say if I'm in Nephio mode, I use it. I use the one from Nephio, and otherwise I do it myself. So, which is what we want, basically, right?
Yeah.
And by the way,
thank you, Sagar. We're past time, so this is really great. Excited to see this, and let's figure out how to make this all, you know, like I'm saying, integrate more to I mean, you did the right thing, right? Building it outside, but I want to make sure it gets highlighted. That's what I'm trying to say. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. Let's work on our planning offline, and I'll see you all later.